Hey, welcome to B Major Productions. My name is Bryan McCall. I am a high school band director and arranger. And on this video, I'm going to talk about how to add rhythmic chords to your band compositions or band arrangements. This is to give a little bit more energy to your arrangements and for us to kind of step away from just having whole notes as our basis for chords in band compositions and to give a little bit more interest in how we approach chords and how we approach voicing in our compositions. So to start off, we're going to look at some of my arrangements that use rhythmic chords in the composition so we can see how they apply in different situations and different arrangements. First, we're going to look at my arrangement for Fireball by Pitbull. And the first part of this is actually a good representation of what rhythmic chords are. So this is taken from the actual guitar part in the very beginning of the song, and it's a very rhythmic D D D D D D D D D D D, and they're outlining the chord structure but through this rhythm. So let's take a listen. All right, so that's an example of something rhythmic, but we still hear the outline of the chords and where the harmony is going. Now, in this song, if we fast forward a bit, in this arrangement, I took kind of the bridge going into the hook. I use that as sort of the verse in this arrangement. So I put the melody within the lower voices. So in the actual song, there's no chords in that part of the song. So just so we can hear what that should sound like, I'm using the studio view on Finale so I can quickly and easily mute unneeded parts. But in the actual song, this is the melody, and I put it within the lower voices. So what I did was there was a lot of emptiness in there. And if you listen to the actual song, there's a part where they, take the D, 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 D. They kind of put it in the background. But I didn't want to replicate that. I wanted something different because we hear that melody a lot, especially in this arrangement. So I listened to figured out the chords, and I added some other elements in here. So what I did, I put the rhythmic chords in the upper voices and within the tuba. And what ended up happening is I had to make some type of rhythm, something to kind of push the momentum forward. When I originally wrote this was a dance feature for the band, so I needed something that kept the energy going. Outside of what the percussion was doing, I had a lot of stuff going in, a lot of grooves going in with the percussion, but I needed something else with the winds. So, I came up with this little rhythm, D D D D D D D D D. So in context, that sounds like this. Oops, sorry. So I forgot to unmute the trumpets. Let's try that again. And so the tuba, this was a bass line I had to make up because there's not really a bass line in the song outside of the bum 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 bee bum bum bum. Outside of that, there's not really a bass line in the song. So I made up a bass line, and really I made the bass line first, and I kind of made the chords based off that bass line. So there's kind of a back and forth with there. But it doesn't have to be anything super complicated, but a lot of time if you use a dotted eighth followed by a 16th, that little bit of syncopation helps a lot. Or if you put things on the upbeats, that helps a lot with this idea of a forward momentum in your composition. So let's listen one more time. can feel that it's pushing forward. Then it's a little bit more simple. Then towards the end, just got a little bit more simpler, just because the melody had a lot more going on. So a lot of times you don't want to have the melody conflicting with the chords. So if your melody has a lot of things going on, you don't want to add a lot of complicated rhythms in the chords, and vice versa. In this instance, there was a lot of space in between what the melody was doing, so I filled that space in with those rhythmic chords. So let's hear it in context of everything, and then you can see when things got a little bit more complicated in the melody. Hey, I went to just having dotted halves in there so we can have a foundation for the melody to sit on. So here's with all the parts in line. And when I got to this latter part, I just said, you know what, let's just have more simpler chords right here. So the trombones had the simpler chords while we had that dee 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 while we had that going on. Just because that's a constantly moving dee 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 dee. Since it's a constantly moving line, again, I didn't want anything super complicated on that. So we'll look at another example of how we can use rhythmic chords in our compositions. So this next example is an arrangement I did recently for Ladies Night by Kool and the Gang. So in this, we actually already have some very rhythmic chords, but it's just simple eighth notes. And I didn't want to keep that same feeling throughout the entire composition, throughout the entire piece. And I needed to find some way to kind of break up that sound. And as well as there was some parts where, there needed some chords in there as well, and we needed to create something. So at the very beginning, it's d d d d d d d d d d d d d d d d d d, really short pingy eighth notes. And at the very beginning, I wanted to keep that because one, it's you hear it in the actual song, the very beginning of the actual song. But eighth notes can kind of help drive things a little bit too. So let's hear the very beginning of this so we can hear the context. All right, and then that continues into the actual song itself. So let's look a little bit further in. All right, so when we get to the C section, sort of a similar thing to what we just looked at for Fireball, where the melody is in the lower voices. So let me mute. Oops, that was already muted. All right, let me mute everybody that's not melody. All right, and there's parts of this melody where there's just a lot of open space. All right, so a lot of open space right there. And with the same philosophy before, we need to fill it up with something. So these chords in this song are not super complicated. So one thing you can do as an arranger is to find inspiration from what you hear in the actual song itself. So one thing I kept on hearing is that dee dee dee, that like really short little kind of like a disco sting dee dee dee. So I wanted to make sure that was still represented somewhere in the chords. So that's what you will see right here on measure 18 on the end of 3, going into 4, that dee dee dee. So I wanted some type of elongation, but I wanted to anticipate those next set of chords. So B B D B D D D D D D D, and then so we see that little dotted eighth, 16th, followed by the eighth on the upbeat rhythm again. Again, it's just a quick and easy way to give some syncopated interest into your composition. So let's hear how it sounds with the bass line and these chords. Let me zoom in so we can see the chord rhythms a little bit more. All right. So again, it doesn't have to be anything complicated, but we just need to fill in that space. And since we had a lot of those open areas in that melody, this helps, you know, give a little bit of, makes the arrangement feel a little bit more full. And you know, if this is played at the tempo that I wanted it at, which is 140, that helps propel it along as well when you have these much quicker tunes and you need to hit the harmony and hit the harmony fast. So let's hear it in context of everything. All right, so right there, right here in measure 21, this is a great example of, once again, getting out of the melody's way. So be da ba da dee. So we had that little phrase right there. Hey, you don't need the chords to overcomplicate what you have right there. So just give them dotted halves, and then we put that little D D, that little push right there on beat 4 to push us forward. Now, when we look in this next section, as I said, I didn't want to have those constant eighth notes going in. So we restate the melody right here. Ba dee 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 dee. We restate that melody there. And instead of just copying and pasting what I did in the beginning, to give a little bit more texture, a little difference in there, I put this new rhythm in here, which is, again, kind of just a variation of what we just heard. So D D D D D D D D D D D D. So we're still getting the function of giving us harmony, but still pushing the sound forward. So let's hear how these chords sound in context. All right, so this is just the chords at the restatement of the melody. All right, and we're going to talk about this a little bit in the next composition we looked at, but that dotted eighth, 16th also fulfills a role of syncing up with the rhythm of the melody. And so if we look right here on measure 25, B da da, that's the rhythm right here we have in the melody voices. But to give just that little bit of cohesion with them, I gave that same first part of that D D along with the chords. So if we listen right here, so I'm gonna add the trumpets in to what the trombones are doing. You're gonna hear just that little bit of working together, essentially. All right, so let's hear that in context with everything. So we're going to add all the melody parts back in. And we're going to take it right here so we can hear ba dee 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 dee, and how they kind of align together. All All right, and so here once again, when we get to the section, when we go to the key change, again that d d d d d, that was a very important part in the actual song. But we needed some type of chords leading up to that, so I built the chords around that. So I made sure that d d d d d, made sure that was the um in the arrangement itself, and then I built the chords around that. All right, and again you'll see that b b ba b, but this time I was taking that from the tuba break, from the tuba sound. So in the bass line in the song, we have bum 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 ba bum bum ba da da bum 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 bum. So that's another idea. If you're having trouble of figuring out where to put those chords, or where to get the rhythms for those chords, I should say, look into bass line. You may be able to find some ideas on the bass line. So in this case, hey, the bass line kind of already outlined B B B B but a B B B D D D D. So I was able to have my chords play around with that bass line. So let's just hear this part going into that key change. All right, and then towards the end of this, I went for simpler chords right here. Not a lot of movement, because we'd have this very staccato d d d d d d d d d d d d d d. We had this very staccato sound constantly going through there, and eventually we're going to add the little b da dee da dee da dee da da. That's going to be added in there. So it's going to be a lot of layers coming in there. So I was like, okay, there's no reason to have complicated rhythms in the chords right here if I know there's going to be a lot of stuff that's going to be layered. And then also with that, it's in an unfamiliar key. Right now we have a lot of sharps in there, so anything that can make it a little bit easier for the musicians to learn at a quicker pace, while still keeping the complexity there, then go for that. If you want to make sure that it's something that's accessible and learnable very, very quickly, go for that. So we'll look at another arrangement, and this one's going to look more on how to integrate what the melody is doing in terms of rhythm, and how the chords can either match that or be very close to that. And that can help us, give us a little bit of a push and a little bit of momentum as well. So the last one we're going to look at today is arrangement I did also sort of recently, was Motown Philly by Boyz II Men. And this song is very, very rhythmic. It's New Jack Swing, so there's a lot of syncopation, a lot of fast notes, a lot of groove. This was an era with a lot of electronic music. So, a lot of composers, a lot of producers at the time, they was able to experiment a lot with different sounds and different rhythms. And we hear that a lot through that New Jack swing style. So in this song, because there was so much heavy rhythm, especially in the melody, it's hard to say, all right, we need to figure out some type of chords and still keep them interesting while still not, falling on stepping on the toes of the melody. So the very beginning of this, I decided to keep it simple. So right here, we have the melody D D D D D D D. Did a little back and forth, ba da 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 D D, ba da da ba 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 B ba. So the chord function right here is just whole notes and half notes. All right, don't get into the way of what the melody is doing. Kind of let them shine, just because it's a very rhythmic melody. It's a lot going on, a lot of notes, and there's a constant back and forth. So let's just hear in the context of just, this was pretty much, there was not a lot of creativity added to this. It was just pretty much the song itself and the notes and rhythms of the regular song. Now, when we get here to the second section, right now, this is when I add a little bit of um, some creativity to it, um, and I did my own rhythms here. So, what I try to do in order to have that um, synchronous sound with what the chords are doing and what the melody is doing, I made it so that a lot of my chords, their starting and stopping matches with some parts of the melody. So right here, right on measure 14, everybody's on this downbeat, right? Everybody is on the downbeat. There's no rest in here. And so the melody is dee 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 dee. All right, a lot of stuff going on right here. What I did with the chords, some of those big changing parts in the melody, I had the chords change along with that. So ba 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 ba. Now, not every note that the melody is changing with, the chords are not changing with every one of those notes. However, with them moving along with the melody, that adds a little bit of a rhythmic push without stepping on the toes of the melody. So let's hear, let's listen to just the chords themselves. So I'm going to mute everything but the chords. And if this technique is done right, you should be able to hum and hear the melody within the chords itself without actually, it being, you know, explicitly played. So let's listen. All right. And depending on the song, sometimes you may have to alter those chords. So when we got towards um, here, we got to measure 18, didn't exactly fall into line. So it is your choice as a arranger if you want to change that up to better match that, or if you want to just keep the same thing you had before, just for the sake of music learning purposes or getting through the parts quicker. Again, that's up to you as a arranger, but you can hear where those notes move, they have a function. So in this case, I was like, all right, how can I keep the momentum going while still giving the chorded instruments having something of interest and not just, whole notes. So when we hear that in context, um, and this may be a little too, the chords may be a little bit too soft because I have a mezzo forte. So let me just make the chorded instruments just a bit louder. Okay, so let's hear it now in context: chords, melody, working together. All right, and I could have added, something else right here too. I just put just a simple whole notes. Um, in that case, I was kind of relying on percussion to, kind of give us that groove and give us into the next section, transition to the next section. Now, speaking of this next section, all right, hey, ba da beep ba 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 beep ba beep ba beep ba beep it. It's a lot going on here. So again, I kind of went to that philosophy from the beginning. Hey, we just need chords to establish. We need chords to just give us the harmony and let the melody shine. So again, if there's a lot going on with the melody, um, we don't need the chords to be super super complicated and have this, you know, muddied sound. I think that's the biggest thing. You don't want to have a muddied sound between what the chords is doing and what your melody is doing. And then, you know, from the rest of this is just mostly a copy and paste, restatement of the beginning. Once we got towards the end of this, this was mostly just a unison line between the band. And again, I just right here you kind of have an example of chords doing double duty. So I have chords right here with the trombone line, but then also have chords right here with trumpet um, and the upper voices because that's just in the actual song. Ba da 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 dee 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 ba da 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 da. That's those chords are already in there. So again, I I could have just put the same rhythm right here for trombones, but that would just mean now everybody's just unison. So that's just everybody dee 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 beep it dee ba da 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 da. Which we've already had some unison things just, you know, 2 bars earlier. So open it up so we can get some excuse me, open it up so we can get that texture change. So a lot of unison right here that helps break it up some. So right there at the end, um, just decided just hey keep that whole note and then have them join on the end of that melody. Ba B just come on that right on that end of it, and it's going to feel good. Stuff like that is going to feel good. So even though this is just outlining just a long whole note, when it does do that rhythmic change and matches up with the melody, it's just going to feel good. It's going to fall into line from what you heard before. So hopefully these comments helped you. Some of these ideas helped you understand how you can add rhythm to your compositions, how to make them interesting, um, and how to add some depth to what you're writing on your music. And you know, hopefully this sparks some ideas on how you can take these and put it into your arrangements, put into your compositions, and to give yourself an identity when you're arranging. Now, when are these acceptable? Things like this. I find fast pieces of music. So, two of the pieces that I showed you, the first two pieces, I wrote those as a dance feature. So something that's quick, up tempo. Motown Philly, this was a drill. So when you're writing a drill, um, you know, you want to. It's going to be a much slower tempo, and idea is that hey, the marchers are going to be marching. They're going to be constantly moving. So um, maybe those rhythmic things are not going to be super super conducive in that sense because they're constantly moving, um, and so that's why you'll see this a lot in dance features where the band is standing still, the focus is on the dancers up in the front of the band, so you can have a lot of these more complicated things going on. But even in slower pieces of music, if there's something open, something that needs to be filled in with musical some musical space or something like that, hey, it could be something as simple as just dotted half quarter note, dotted half quarter note. Something more than just whole notes and half notes can bring a lot to the composition. So hopefully this was helpful for you. I'll be uploading some more arranging tips and things that I've learned over the years as a high school band director and just arranger for other bands. So if you like what you saw, please consider subscribing to this, liking the video, and sticking around for more of my compositions and more thoughts on arranging. Thank you all. Have a good one.